What is DYSJUO? We are the home for culture-defining brands, both ours and yours. 10 Over Surf Shop is more than a retail hub and event space. We're fully stocked with expert advice
and shared stories.
Stories in Longboarder and Wavelength magazine, Europe's longest-running surf mag, connecting brands to ocean enthusiasts globally. But when you need to make an impact 24 times a second, Cassette can turn the lens on your brand and reframe how your audience sees you. Reaching the real world at the UK Surf and Skate Expo to over 10,000 people. That's real-world engagement. And when digital visibility is what you need, Marwick Marketing is your brand's ticket to that front page feeling. Because you don't have to surf or skate to embrace the flow state of marketing. These are our brands. Let's talk about yours. DYSJUO, the home for culture-defining brands.
Thanks for coming, everyone. Let us know if you can't hear us, and we'll try and change the mics a bit. So, as you can see up here, this is about activism. We won't be having much on the slide, anything on the slides today. It's just a good old chat with this lovely group of humans from all over the country who have come to talk about activism and how that can be from anything small or big and make a huge impact, no matter if it's a conversation or rallying for change in the government or anything like that. So it'll be a pretty relaxed chat in which I'd love for you guys to just jump in and talk at any point you want, even if you disagree or agree. If there's any questions anyone wants to ask, even throughout, if you can't wait until the end, then you're welcome to grab a mic and ask something. The general focus of this is to talk about how we are all fed this false narrative that we can't really have the power to create change in our lives because we rely on industry and we rely on government and we rely on brands now. And we've been fed this narrative that we are just consumers of this world and that we don't have the control for the one that we want to see, which is complete rubbish, for lack of a better word. And this chat is about some brilliant surfers who all challenge that narrative in their day-to-day lives, in their work, and just in general. Activism can be in many forms. It can be small, it can be big, but it's ultimately just about creating change that makes a difference, or even if it doesn't make a difference, but you've tried. And for people, planet, community, anything really. And so today we have on our panel is Dan from Blue Marine Foundation, and then we have Yvette from Wavelength, Surf Skate Sewage, and the UK Surf Awards Sustainability winner from last night. We have Phoebe. I'm really bad at pronouncing your second name.
Strachan.
There you go. Who's come down from Scotland, and she's a friend of Patagonia. She does things in her local area to get the kids all rallied up, caring about the environment. She's a joiner and a carpenter and an amazing surf coach, and also 5 times Scottish champion, which is pretty rad. Then we have Gabe here, who's from Patagonia, and also used to be British champ a couple of times, big wave surfer, and now channels all of his energy into working for a brand that are putting the planet and community and people first. If anyone wants any water.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, my mouth's already dry. So we've got our big dumb cups for us.
Yeah, don't mind us.
Sorry, we're just going to all have a drink. There we go. Whoever brought these over, thank you so much. I will spill that on me, for sure. So this chat kind of came about because I was invited by Gabe and Patagonia to go to Iceland in April earlier this year, along with the rest of you, but only me and Yvette could make it. We were roomies for a week. And here we were learning about open net salmon farming and just about how bad that industry is and how it's kind of taken over in Norway, and it's completely impacted the reality of what the future of fishing and also the fjords of Norway and Iceland look like now, and Chile and America and everything. And in Iceland, they're trying to stop it from happening because they've got a group of amazing surfers, activists, and just ralliers who are actually creating a real change and managing to stop a huge industry from happening. And Norway wasn't able to do that because it started about 60 years ago. So Patagonia have been supporting that action over in Iceland to help kind of stop it happening. And so there was an impact camp where we all came together and we heard stories from the locals, and we heard like just amazing things, and it was just so emotional, and it also was so empowering to see how even a small group of 5-10 people can make a huge difference and change such a big beast of a thing. And so I came back from that as someone who kind of lost their way with activism. I used to do a lot more of it when I graduated, and then felt like I was powerless and couldn't do it, and that one person can't make a difference. And so going on that trip kind of relit that fire in me, and I was like, we need to do something, we need to talk more about it, and I thought this would be an amazing place to do that. And Yvette was on with me on that trip. There was a lot of emotions, there was a lot of tears and things.
There were a lot of tears.
Yeah, and then Gabe was helping with organising that, and you couldn't make it, sadly, but how did that come about with Patagonia's involvement?
So the company Patagonia is founded by Yvonne Chouinard, who's an avid surfer, climber, and fly fisherman. Key bit being the fly fishing. So obviously we make fly fishing products, but more than that, it's that sort of connection between the humans and the river systems and the ocean. So they've had a long history in campaigning for river protection. Be that the dams that go into the rivers and block the sediment and the fish going upstream, and specifically tied to salmon. So the company's really tied into that river system as well as oceans and mountains. Specifically Iceland, though, the main thing, as you said, in Norway, for example, the industry is so entrenched, it's really hard to make that difference. In Scotland, for example, it's such a cultural thing, like Scottish salmon's this like amazingly desired product. You go to California, there'll be Scottish salmon on the menu, for example, but the chances are it's farmed Scottish salmon. The reason why we've honed in on Iceland is because it's an emerging industry there. The population of Iceland's relatively small. The jobs involved in that industry are in the 200 to 300. It's a pretty small, tight industry. And also in Iceland, you can imagine everyone knows everyone. So all of these conversations can happen. So if some of the grassroots activists, they didn't want to be activists, they just want to protect their rivers and their oceans, and they're seeing the sort of industry coming in and the power it's having over the community, they want to dive in early, make the change, and then they can directly, it's so interconnected. It feels like it's a battle that could be won. So when, they, for example, they got Bjork in to do a soundtrack, we made a film about it, which is, there's a lot more information on the website and stories and films, and this was the sort of, just trying to get more widen the sort of community involvement. But it feels like it's a battle that could be won. And because every voice has a sort of influence in Iceland, and we were really fortunate that our goal of that trip was to bring in these influential people who could then become our take this sort of Icelandic voice wider and put pressure from externally into Iceland to hopefully sway the dial to the decision makers, put pressure on.
Yeah, and most of those people that you invited were surfers or ocean lovers or people in the industry, whether that be journalism or photographers or just influential people. And going there was incredible because it just showed that we shouldn't just be talking about the great things in life. We should be talking about all the things that come with that, the ugly and the good. And surfing is a great outlet for that, because we can look at it through the positive lens of joy, and then we can be like, okay, now here's the really bad stuff that's happening at the same time. And so that impact count was amazing for that. And it's true that it felt like real change could happen, and it was such a small core group of people that were leading that. And so it was amazing to see that one person can pack a punch, and that can do a huge, huge thing in any industry, really. You've just got to be loud enough. Like, I forget her name, but the woman who's trying to sort out Swift bricks at the moment, who stood up in Parliament and painted her naked body as a Swift. It's now happening, and I emailed my MP the other day, and he replied saying, yep, we're trying to bring this in now. And so that was one person doing it for the Swifts, which is amazing. How long have you been at Patagonia for now?
I've been just over 10 years.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And what made the shift from professional surfing to wanting to focus on a company that were putting
interesting question. Well, it's fantastic being like in this expo, because you haven't really had a UK like surf gathering sort of industry community gathering for some time, other than like the Boardmasters, which feels more like a party celebration. I was sponsored by many of the surf brands that we all probably know and love, but when I was always at this point, I had a real frustration with that. You know, I mean, I'm sure there's nobody from Quicksilver here today, but I worked for Quicksilver for a long time as their like team rider, and as a pro surfer, I was like infuriated at the fact that so few of their products were made of organic cotton. Something super simple, like something super, super basic. Like of the hundreds of t-shirts they made, a handful were organic cotton. And I'm like, this is surely like the basic level of entry into any sort of brand responsibility. So I always had this like desire to work for some brand with higher values than just stickers on boards, pro surfers, world tour trophies, photos, images, which that was what was my like driving. That was my drive to be a pro surfer. But when you are a pro surfer and you get the trophies and you get the stickers on the board, you want a bit more than that. And probably as you grow older and more mature, you're getting wrapped up in that sort of big brand. And at the time, Quicksilver had stores on Regent Street. I think they had like 2 or 3 massive, Covent Garden, Regent Street. They were massive stores. It was a huge brand at the time. But I always wanted like something more than that. And Patagonia offered that with its family values, that real like responsibility to the planet, not just to the product and the planet. They are in business. They want to make money. They want to make the best product and have all of the values, the supply chain, the sort of origin of the product to be responsible. We're not saying we're eco, we're not sustainable, it's not perfect, but it's like the more layers of the onion you unpeel, the more layers there are, so there's always more and more and more to do. But Patagonia were really like leading the way. And they were very transparent as well, like this is the playbook. If you want to make this sort of product, we even show everyone on the website like who the suppliers are. If you want a fair trade, wetsuit, board shorts, we go through the whole supply chain to go back to so that anyone else can really sort of track it. You just want to be transparent as much as possible.
Yeah, every product and every item we buy should have its own passport, really.
Kind of, yeah.
Shows that as well. It's really hard as surfers as well, especially if you're a sponsored surfer or you're wanting to make it big, to then make that decision, because also you want to do what you love and you want to be paid for what you love doing. And so kind of once you are awoken to that, it's kind of hard to go back from it. And myself as a commercial photographer, since that trip in Iceland, I'm finding it very hard to actually go back into shooting things that aren't with brands showing that they're trying to do something at the bare minimum. For yourself, Phoebe, because you're a competitive surfer and you're a friend of Patagonia, but you're not sponsored by Patagonia, how do you find it being a surfer in the competitive space and being aware of these things going on, and what do you do in your day-to-day life and your coaching to have these conversations with people?
Well, I work with a lot of kids through my coaching, and like I run the surf club in Thurso, and we have 30 kids that come every week from April till October. And it's just with them that you try and have a little chat, whether it's like we talk about, sometimes we're seeing all the plastic on the beach, and then we try and make a game of it. Who can find the smallest piece? Who can find the biggest piece? And you've got to try and keep it fun with them. So just kind of making it fun, and like, we've got quite a bad sewage problem, as it does the whole of the UK, but in Thurso, it actually flows out into Thurso East. Is such an amazing wave. People travel from all over the world, but what they don't know is every time it rains, basically the sewage gets discharged out and it goes straight into the Thurso East lineup. So for our local kids, like, we obviously want to try and make the world a better place for them and let them to understand. So I set them a task to try and like create some posters to almost have a mini protest on the beach. And they did amazing. Like, it was so cool to see, and just kind of getting them to like give them the knowledge and the encouragement that actually they can make a change is pretty important to me.
Have you seen much of a after effect from that with the kids?
Yeah, so it then went to the paper and the local MP, and then so it went out in the paper, and then the kids' teachers at the school printed it out and put it up, and then obviously that then started a conversation in the schools. So all the kids in the schools are learning about it. Like, it's then going back to parents. It's kind of having that almost ripple effect through the schools, and if everyone's talking about it, then we should hopefully start being able to make a change.
Yeah, because it's something that we unlearn as kids. When I was a kid, I was like standing in supermarkets fundraising for the local hospice and doing all these things. And then my nieces and nephews, when they were younger, I used to work at Surf Skate Sewage, and they went on a holiday at 6 years old and brought me back microplastics they'd found at the beach. But now that they've got telephones and things like that, they would never dream of that sort of thing. Yeah. So it is something that we need to try and keep the younger generation from like steering away from and being custodians forever and keep going. And do you think that goes onto their parents at all or anything like that? Have you ever?
I think for sure, because obviously if a kid's interested, a parent is naturally going to take an interest in what a kid is interested in. And like, even for like people that don't have children and like just peers, it's like, you're not going to ignore a kid holding up a sign that says stop sewage. Like, so the kids ask the tough questions and make people stop and think. So even if you start from like that kind of ground level, it's got to go up the chain of command at some point.
Yeah, that's such a great point. We need more kids in Parliament. That you work a lot with children. How do you find the impact of what Wavelength, and Wavelength is a charity, CIC, where Yvette and the rest of Wavelength are helping more people feel the benefit of the ocean and feeling safe and seen and just held by the effects of water, and also that it's a place for everyone, no matter what background you're from. How have you learned that form of activism, which it shouldn't even be activism, but it is in this day and age, how's that affected the kids you work with? And feel free to expand on what you do.
I mean, I think it's fun as opposed to activism, what we do, and it's probably really similar to Phoebe. You know, we're the same, that we'll have sessions where we'll be like, oh my God, it's a really high tide today. We can see all the microplastics along the tide line, so let's have a stop and think about this, and, you know, where's all this going? Where's it coming from? How have they occurred? Yeah, totally. And so you have those chats, and I think it's giving them like the opportunity to explore that stuff, and the chance to have someone to listen to what they're saying. And, you know, similar to I guess your group having a mini protest, and it allows them space to explore that side.
And ask questions.
Yeah, ask questions.
They might not be able to ask anyone else.
Yeah, exactly, and not to feel like they're the only one kind of thinking this. You know, we had sewage coming out in our beaches that stopped one of our sessions, and we sort of provided that similar sort of lead up to what happens within the ocean space, that one of our kids, you know, wrote to the then Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Now, had one of us as grown adults written that, there's no way we were getting a response. But a 10-year-old writing that letter to 10 Downing Street got a direct response from Rishi Sunak
Wow.
to their school. Yeah.
didn't
And it
know
was
about that.
unbelievable. And her sister, who was 9 at the time, wrote to the CEO of South West Water, also got a response.
Did they get, what was the response?
Yeah, they both got responses.
We should have them up on here.
Honestly, it blew my mind that, but it just goes to show that if you give people access, support, opportunity, that's all that is required. It's not this like huge thing, but you just need to give someone the avenue to do it. And I think that's the problem, is we've created this space that people find incredibly inaccessible. People find really exclusive, really almost like unwelcoming at times. But it's not. You just need to provide this pathway, and then, they're writing to the Prime Minister. It's legendary.
Yeah. How can you protect what you love if you haven't been able to get there to love it in the first place?
100%.
Within what you've been doing with your work, and now you've just started the journey of the Churchill Fellowship, which is extremely exciting. I've been waiting to ask you more about it, so you can talk to it in front of all these people, rather than
Giddy.
between us two.
Just
And I know
between
that
you and these.
yeah, just our friends here. Could you tell us what that is and the unique research that you're looking into?
Yes, so if anybody kind of knows a little bit of my backstory, it was just that I created a surf club based on my then daughter wanting to surf and not finding anything that suited them at that point. We created a club. It's been going on. That sort of introduced me to surfing as a non-surfer, having only ever had one lesson. But I saw the response, I saw the love, I saw the fun, and I saw the benefit. And so I then became like totally obsessed with this crazy sport that I knew nothing about, and learned to love it and learned to know a hell of a lot about it over the years that I've been in it, and really, like, pardon the pun, but immersed myself within it, and saw the huge barriers to entry for different communities, saw the fact that there was never anybody of mixed heritage like me or anybody of colour like me in any of the rooms that I was in discussing this space, and that then followed on to the fact that I fell in love with the ocean, fell in love with caring for it, and then became really passionate about conservation, which is something I probably didn't think about when I was younger because I wasn't brought up in this space. So I quickly realised that the barriers were really similar, and the gatekeepers were really similar too. And it's something that I've pushed back against for a really long time, to my detriment, and quite often to, being called out online, being trolled for calling a sport racist, which I never have done. I've just said it's inaccessible. So I've had all the sort of right-wing stuff coming at me and all sorts over the years. How dare I say such stuff about this sport? And it's been really hard to kind of navigate that at times, but it has just basically made it clear that it's an issue. So I've continued kind of in that discussion, and it put me in an interview space to apply for a Churchill Fellowship to look at surfing can change the face of ocean conservation if we challenge and remove the barriers of entry to surfing for communities from diverse ethnic communities. And despite myself being a hot, sweaty mess in the interview, they decided that a hot, sweaty mess was what they needed to conduct this research.
No one can say no to you, Yvette.
Apparently not. And so they are funding me to go off on 6 weeks of learning to see from other countries how they've done it successfully, to bring that learning back to the UK, because I think we've got a really long way to go in terms of access to surf spaces, ocean advocacy spaces at all levels of that. I think we're doing it well at grassroots, but we're not doing it well anywhere else. And so I'll be learning in New York, California, Hawaii, Australia, Bangladesh. And just to make it slightly worse, I'll be going in January.
So that it's nice and warm for you. And we're all here.
It's all research, I promise.
Yes.
No holiday in there at all.
Yeah, that's amazing, because it's not too unobvious that our surf down here is very narrow for what it is. And it was amazing that yesterday Zoe Smith won the Female Surfers Award, and that was incredible. And I was so excited by that, but then I couldn't help think the men's division didn't even have a parasurfer in there. And so it'd be great if we were seeing more of this and more diversity in all fields of things in surfing, and especially in the advocacy. So if everything's always trying to be changed by someone who is of one background, then we're not learning from people who might know the way better than we know as well, especially if it's all people in, like, even just within our country, if the people making the changes are all people in London who aren't connected to nature and have no idea, and then they have to make the choices on if the pollution going into the sea and how that should be done. If they were down here, maybe that would be different. And
I think that's it. We've got a real kind of, as Western society in general has this sort of feeling that we know better and that we are more intelligent, our research is more valid, our universities are better, our ways of doing things are just more. And that's just not true. You know, when we look at the way sort of indigenous communities have looked after the planet for millennia, and we're now only going kind of, actually, should we look at that knowledge? And it's only because I think Western sort of societies and research institutes are going, shall we look at that knowledge, that we're looking at that knowledge in the detail that we are. But actually it's been there the whole time, but we're just so blinkered to kind of thinking our way is the best way, that I'm so interested in how we can, like, change that around.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see how that comes about.
Which I think is a lot what you do with Blue Marine Foundation, is all over the world. You know, I know me and you have had our discussions about MPAs in overseas territories, which we won't go into now because we might end up fighting. But
do it. I'm joking.
We've got an arm wrestling platform.
You'll win.
I'll let you expand on that, Dan.
Yeah, because Dan, you work a lot with Blue Marine Foundation. You're a development director, and you work a lot in making people remember the connection between ocean and climate crisis, and how the ocean is fundamental in helping with that. And I was reading an article recently, and you talk about shifting baseline syndrome, and even that in itself is similar to what Phoebe was saying earlier, and the kids there don't know about what's going on because they don't know the truth of what it used to be like. What have you learned through your work and then your experience in being a surfer who was woken up to all of the stuff going on, and how that's got you to where you are now?
Yeah, I grew up surfing on the East Coast, but not the East Coast with lots of good point breaks and reefs like Gabe and Sandy, like right at the bottom where there's not really any swell exposure, and it's a pretty desperate pursuit, but when it happens, you're like super excited about it. It's very rare. And as well as that, the sea's like extremely brown, and you can't really see anything. And that sort of, for me, goes for ocean conservation in general. Like, we don't really see the change. And sometimes we hear about the change, and a lot of the most fascinating conversations I have are with people who are, you know, in their 70s or 80s, and they've witnessed like a complete shift in the ecosystem. A friend of ours called Sylvia Earle, she's like, people ask me, where's the best place to go diving in the world? And she's like, anywhere 50 years ago. And that's kind of...
Same with surfing, to be fair.
Yeah, well, that's true, yeah. But I guess, too, like, our currency really is hope, and that's a lot what we're dealing with. And like you were saying about the guys in Iceland being this tiny group of people, it was a tiny group of people that saved humpback whales. Like, everyone in this room, I'd imagine, feels fairly affectionately disposed towards humpback whales. They're pretty epic things. And they super nearly went extinct. And without a very small group of people really putting their lives on the line, they would have gone, man. And so I think we should never doubt that we can make those kind of changes. And I guess I'm lucky to work globally, partly because I get to go and see amazing things, but also, and it's more about, in some ways, meeting people who have put their lives and their careers into like trying to change things that most of us will never see or understand.
Career suicide a lot of the time as well in the surf industry.
It's not the way, it's not the road to riches, that's for sure.
Yeah.
you know.
Which is in other ways, I guess.
Yeah, it's like I think I've always like had a very strong connection, been lucky enough to surf in a lot of places without any people at all, anywhere nearby, including Iceland a lot. And I guess bringing that, like feeling like increasingly over time, like it would be great to give back to that. And that was how I came into conservation, how I started working in the space, which I've been doing for 10 years now. But yeah, it just felt, you know, it really just came about through caring about it and wanting to help, rather than having any skills, really.
Were you a surfer first or a conservationist first?
I don't know. I was like really couldn't see very well when I was a kid.
See?
Yeah, I couldn't see very well at all. I didn't get diagnosed with really acute short-sightedness till I was 10. So I spent a lot of my childhood looking at things real close up.
Okay.
Like insects and stuff.
Oh, okay.
So I was pretty obsessed with the natural world even when I was tiny, and yeah, all of the stories from my parents are like, yeah, I was always in love with the natural world. It's always been part of my life, but yeah, I didn't have a clue how to work in conservation. I didn't know that that was possible. I sort of cared deeply, but didn't know how to articulate it. And I guess I know a lot of people who think are in a similar state of mind. And like Yvette was saying, like surfing as well, but like conservation can feel very elite and very like hard to access. It feels like a tiny club. But I guess when you go out into the world, you just see all these rad people and it's truly diverse out there. It's really not diverse here, but and in lots of other places. But it's amazing getting to work with people from all over the planet. But it does feel quite impossible to turn your care for the ecosystem into something like that.
And a lot of the time I think we feel like we have to have careers in conservation to be conservationists or to be people who advocate for human rights or someone down the road from you or anything like that, but you don't have to be. And I think as well we've been told that if you want a job similar to yours, then you must go to uni and you must do all these things and you must tick all these boxes and do the right things to get to that. But I am now in a job where I don't have a writing background, but I just was passionate and started knocking on enough doors and annoying enough people until someone kept giving me jobs. And Yvette started up something because you saw a space, and then with your coaching, you just make those conversations happen, and you're teaching in those ways. And Gabe, you chose to change your path yourself. You could have gone into professional surfing and just stayed in that trajectory. And it's not, we don't need like degrees in order to do these things, in order to be people who stand up for what we care for either. And
we get so much from the sea, like because we all love it's somewhere where we all play. So just to give something back, like it's nice. It's a good feeling.
Yeah. Do you find in Scotland, because it's so wild and it's so, I guess, bleak sometimes, and so like unattainable? There's so much unattainable nature there. Do you find that the connection from the surfers there and the ocean goers, are many of them fueled to do something? It's not necessarily about just the planet, but like people and things as well? Or is there quite a big disconnect because it's so scary and wild and people just think, why would we want nature to be on our side?
Yeah, I think like it's quite hard in Scotland because obviously in each little area where there's surfing, we're super tight knit, but like we're all spread out massively. Like, and obviously in Scotland, one of the main kind of industries is fishing, and that's like a lot of people's livelihood, and oil and gas as well. So you've got these big kind of companies and you just feel tiny little surf community trying to push against these big companies. But I think everyone has got enough drive and kind of they feel passionate about it that I think like it's not unattainable. So
it's a huge thing that always comes up, that people think that those activists and those people that are going against the bottom trawlers and the open nets, they're against people's jobs, and it's just wild because, and you do a lot of this in your work, so you're probably better to talk about this, but how it's not going against the people working. It's trying to make a better place so they can keep working. Otherwise, all the fish will be gone.
Just change the way that they're doing it slightly.
Yeah, and I guess as consumers, the best thing we can do is just check where our food is coming from. Like to bring it back to the open net salmon farming in Iceland, we've been told by industries that if it says on the back, freshwater farmed, that it means it's been caught on a line by a fisherman just like going out of his little boat and his little net, but it's not. It's still in a net in a fjord, and there's 10,000 fish in there, maybe more.
Loads of lice.
Loads of lice. Born with these gross lice.
They're all diseased.
Chucked over the net if they've died and they don't serve a purpose, and then washed away again. And they still say on the packaging, because I think in Scotland the industry managed to fight against a court case to be allowed to put freshwater farmed on it, so that then everyone sees fresh and they think, oh, it's fresh, and they don't read anything else. But if you go to the supermarket next time you go there and then look at the fish aisle in Lidl or Aldi and then be like, okay, there's salmon, okay, there's bass, there's cod, and now there it is again, there it is again, there it is again. How has that been caught by a fisherman or a fisher person on a line and then gone to the supermarket, and then round the corner it's repeated again and again?
It's like there's almost, it's such an attainable, it's sold as this like amazing source of protein, and it's in every shop. It's really cheap, it's really accessible, but it's not the true value of the product. The product is fish. And probably the other thing to know is that you imagine these farmed salmon that are imported in, and should the net break or they escape, they are then going to dilute the DNA of the wild fish that are in those environments. We have Scotland, Scandinavia, or Iceland. And you think these fantastic, incredibly powerful salmon that have survived millennia, and they go back to the same river to spawn for their lifespan and their entirety of their like DNA chain, and then these sort of mutated mutant fish escape, and suddenly that DNA is just getting eroded so rapidly.
Yeah.
And so suddenly all of the wild, natural salmon, that whole population is decimated. So that's almost, the sort of one of the critical aspects. The two things is, one is we all buy it cheaply, but the natural cost is vast because we're losing these like natural salmon populations.
Yeah, and the irony that salmon 60 years ago became the people's food because it was healthy and it was something that could feed the ever-growing nation. That
it used to be just
fed.
for Christmas, like one Christmas salmon once a year, and that was it. Now it's in...
And now it's like, it's for everyone because it's healthy, and it's not healthy. They feed them tablets so that they're pink. They're not actually pink, the ones that are farmed. And then they have to give them food to keep them going that is taken from Africa, which is food that they should be eating, like anchovies and things like that. And so,
or Antarctic krill.
Yeah.
Like the krill, the bodies of the krill go into salmon farm food. And there's a lot of cautionary tales, like Chile, like if you spend time in the fjords in Patagonia, I mean, it's kind of heartbreaking. Even if you're just above water, because there's so much pollution from them. We spent some time there with these farmers, and they were cooking us oysters out of the fjord, which is what they've been subsisting on their whole lives. And it's really sad to see. Tasmania the same. But there's places like Argentina where a tiny group of people managed to get it held at bay.
Yeah.
And so there's various front lines around the world. Good to focus in on them. Good at Patagonia to do that stuff.
Well, I think, Iceland is maybe one that we can win, because we did also do a really big ocean bottom trawling campaign with Dan and Blue Marine Foundation. But with that campaign, it was such a vast campaign and such a vast ocean. I was questioning, like, do we have the strength of voice to make change in that industry across these like European policies, and super geeky on this stuff. And Dan's team are phenomenal at the sort of politics behind it. But this Iceland was literally like, we can maybe focus in on this. If we win in Iceland, then maybe we can win in Scotland, and then you might be able to start this ball rolling.
I think what made me really, like when we went to Iceland, one of the biggest takeaways, apart from like figuring out why I was invited, was like, why me? But was kind of the people who were there who were doing like activism. You know, you have these like, we've all seen them, we all follow them on Instagram. They've got like thousands and thousands or millions of followers, and you know, they're like held up as these fantastic icons of doing great stuff and making great change. But actually, they were just like everybody that you meet on the street. They were just like everybody that sat, you know, at the bus stop or in the supermarket or in this audience and up on this stage. They were just people, and that was what was really nice, is like you don't always have to, you know, be this person who's got this crazy online presence to make change and affect change. You just need to, I was just looking, there's a small child there, so I'm not going to swear. You just need to really give a damn about something. I think we can all imagine what word I was putting in. And that to me was really powerful, because, you know, I'm sure that everyone gets it. You know, massive imposter syndrome of like, I'm not enough and I don't have the experience, I don't have the degree, I'm a terrible surfer, all this stuff. Okay, maybe not the terrible surfer bit for you lot, but I'm going to take that one.
You're the one having the most fun. So
Yeah, I am the one that has the most fun. Yeah, this is
You're
true.
my favourite
You've got
surfer
photographic evidence of that. The Patagonia
I've never
sticky
seen
man.
anyone in such a cold landscape so happy. It's like the only surf photo I got from that trip.
So yeah, if Patagonia ever want to make one of those like little sticky men that do that, you've literally got the model. Honestly, I kid you not. Sorry, we digress. But it's, you know, we all get that imposter syndrome because we think we're not enough. And amongst the many other lessons that trip to Iceland taught me, and there were so many, apart from the fact that Ramon Navarro is really terrible at karaoke. The lesson was that we can all do it, we just have to care, and we have to talk about it to anybody. You know, I thought I don't have like a presence online, or I don't write for a magazine, I'm not a photographer.
Because I remember on that trip you kept being like, why am I here?
am I
don't
even
deserve to be
here?
here. And I was like, well, because you care.
And I
that,
remember though,
it's infectious
that's
as well.
it. And I went home and I stood on the beachfront, like in one of our sessions, like talking, like waxing lyrical about like salmon in Iceland. And these poor parents next to me, just there to cheer on their children, were going, oh my God, is that really true? And I was like, yeah, it's so disgusting, isn't it? And none of them have eaten salmon since that.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, that made a difference to those 7 people. Those 7 people make a difference to another 7 people, so on and so forth. And there's your ripple effect. And I'm just me, stood on a beach in North
just by
Devon.
starting a conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, so you're all going to go home now and look at your salmon. Sorry, everyone.
We've ruined
It's kind of annoying.
Yeah.
Same with tuna, you know.
Yeah, I miss tuna. Man.
Disgusting.
And it is just as simple as that for like trying to change anything. Is just, you don't have to be someone who works in it and lives it and is a hippie who only eats grass and washes once a year. Like, you don't, I say that and I live in a caravan. I do wash, I promise. Our water has stopped working today, but that's fine. You can work in things where if you work in the oil companies or you work in a plastic company and be like, okay, I do that. So on the weekends, I'm going to go and volunteer with a beach clean, or I'm going to go and plant trees for a company. Like, my job is extremely extractive with photography, so every winter I've kind of set myself a challenge that I'm going to go and tree plant for a whole week. My body is just going to go through hell to tree plant, and that's kind of giving back. And anyone who works in any industry can do that, and you don't have to have it be your job, and you don't need to strive for it to be your job either.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes that actually takes the joy away from caring.
Yeah, we don't have to be perfect because
No.
we're not.
I'm very aware of the big red clock that's ticking down in front of us. So I'm going to ask you guys individually, what would be the thing that started you, the smallest thing that started you on this journey? Because once you start and once you see and once you open up, you can't really go back, and it is a ripple effect from there. And then what would your advice be for that small thing for someone else to do from this room today? Starting with you, Dan.
I think just keep doing what you're doing, keep exposing yourselves to it. Like, I came to this through, like, getting into kelp, and, you know, when I was living up in Scotland, in one of the islands, and spent a lot of time, because it was flat a lot, spent a lot of time sort of nosing around in the kelp forest. And that's what set me on this road, and I don't know why, but that, like, set the hook with me. It's like, wow, this kelp's rad, like, it's incredible. So I think just, you know, just keep living your life as you're living it, and, like, experiencing, like, the ocean and all of the things that come with it. And by osmosis, like, I think that, you know, you want to give back and you want to change things.
100%. Yvette?
I think the one defining moment that kind of struck me on this, like, quite definite path of calling stuff out, especially within, like, surfing, was probably sitting down with my dad after I'd been massively trolled about diverse ethnic communities and sort of being quite a white space within surfing. And my dad saying to me, gosh, I remember when I was, you know, working for the NHS. So he came over from Mauritius as part of that sort of rebuild after World War II. And he said to me, he said, yeah, but Yvette, gosh, when I was, you know, young, working within the hospital system, we were told that, you know, you'll never get promoted, you know, don't even think about that job because we don't promote people of your colour, and all of that. And that was just kind of, that was what the given was. And luckily enough, in this day and age, you know, for me, that conversation was just like, I've got this real privilege that I can say no to that, and I can say, actually, you're wrong, this is exclusive, this is this, and I'm not going to be told, I'm going to be trolled for it, yes, and that's okay, but the law is on my side, right is on my side, but it's only the not nice people that are not on my side. And I just think for me, that was a real defining moment to stand by that privilege of how we've gone from a moment of saying you can't because you're this colour, to me going, actually, no, we can all do this because it doesn't matter who we are. We've all got access and opportunity, and we're all connected by that ocean, so we should all be allowed to kind of be part of it.
I think for me it was Gabe very kindly invited me on a trip with some incredible individuals to try and get a shot for the bottom trawling campaign. And we went to one of the most beautiful parts of Scotland. It's so wild and remote. And as part of the shot, we were kind of diving down into the kelp. And the visibility was so amazing. And it was just amazing to see the life and how beautiful it is down there. But then to think that actually all this is just getting destroyed from people's greed. So that kind of, to me, I went home and thought about it and did a bit of research and was like, yeah, we really need to kind of put a stop to that. And kind of you just got to have a conversation. Like, we have the whole world at our fingertips. Go on YouTube, go on Instagram. Like, it's all there. You don't have to read long articles. You can listen to podcasts. Like, if you care about it enough, you will find a way to kind of not, like, make a change. So I think. And
you write to your MP a lot as well. We were talking about it earlier.
I annoy him quite a lot.
It's what, like, Yvette was saying before this, like, just posting on Facebook isn't enough. And
yeah, even writing to your local paper. Yeah. Like, if everyone reads the local paper or it gets put online, it gets shared, like, it's going to reach a larger amount of people, and it's people that are maybe completely unaware. So, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I've got to say as well, I'm so proud to be sitting next to these awesome humans as well. Like, they're absolutely phenomenal. So thank you so much for coming and sharing your stories, because they're phenomenal. I couldn't have asked for more awesome humans to be sat next to. But I can clearly pinpoint the moment that sort of was a crossroads for me, and I was 16, northeast England, Hartlepool. Sewage situation was off the hook at the time, and it was Surf Against Sewage. At the time, it was Chris Hines. Came up to the northeast for a big press call with the gas masks on, inflatable turd, and we got sort of dragged down as these young surfers, and I always wanted to be like a pro surfer. It wasn't Kelly Slater at the time. It was like the era above him. More like Tom Carroll, I'd say. I could be further that. Yeah, I was more like that era. He was my icon, but then Kelly. But I was on this sort of pro surfer dream, which is really abstract, and then SAS came in as this like way more radical organization.
Yeah.
than any pro surfing situation you've ever seen. So when someone from Cornwall, St Agnes had come up to the northeast to put their lives on the line, you could say reputation on the line, risk on the line, I was like, these are the real, like, radical humans in our community, and I'll go to hell and back for them. Even though I sort of went down this sort of my dream career, I always had that in mind, and at that pivotal moment of like age 16, like what we're doing, where we're going, I was like hooked on that activist, counterculture, those are the anti-heroes, which I absolutely love. So my advice to anyone is like, get involved with, SAS is out here, Wave Project's out here, Yvette's organization, your local surf group, start your own, just get involved, do something, take the junk off the beach so the person next to you goes, oh, you're picking up the rubbish, we leave that for the council to pick up. Now, it's like you take ownership of your space, protect what you love.
Okay. We were going to do questions, but I'm pretty sure we don't have time for that. I can see a man shaking his head at me. And so I just want to say thanks so much, guys. It's very exciting to be up here with people that I just respect so much. And
Thanks, Bella.
thanks for letting me ramble on. Thanks, everyone.